Hey, welcome everybody to Pivot Point of View. I'm joined with my co-host Destry Millsap, and today we have the great honor of having Chad Dunn with us. And Chad is the owner, CEO of Move Performance and Physical Therapy in Chandler, Arizona. And Chad has a really unique story. He grew up BMX bike racing. I'm not going to steal his whole thunder on what his background was, but he kind of went through some hard times and actually even did a little time. So I want everybody to stay tuned because he has a book that he's going to talk about to help everybody with mindset and what can we do whether we are in hard times or not? Like, how can we help our mind do the best things for us? So, welcome to the podcast, Chad.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate y'all very much. Yeah, this is a different. When I got the request and they said, this is more of an equine, it's a pivot. I'm like, oh, this is perfect though, because I can go and everybody they're like, how are you going to speak on this podcast? I'm like, this is easy. This is very easy. I have my roots go back to the farm. My roots go back to ranching. So I will make this, and I've got some pretty cool stuff we can tie this all in together. So definitely, I
Awesome.
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background and so where how did your roots go back to ranching and all that?
West, yeah. So my father, my father's from Durango, Colorado, right for the Four Corners. He was a bull rider, outgrew that, went into bronc riding. My grandfather, cattleman. I think currently they still have 100 and some odd acres of the homestead that's out in the La Plata Hills. My nieces, they all do the gymkhana, barrel racing. So the cowboy that's in the roots, that's in my boots, the roots. The hard work, the toughness, the just the country life, the hard life. That's what's in my blood. That's what's in my blood. So my dad was fortunate to go to college. He got away from the ranch, went to go play football up at Colorado State, and I was born in Fort Collins also in 1974. And life that I started to live was in Colorado, obviously being with country families and whatnot. I started sports, and my 6 year old, they bought me a BMX bike. So again, my sports was more to just bring me to my identity, to who I am today. I like thrill. I like hard work. I like adrenaline. Um, I would be the bullfighter if I could, or the bull rider if I could, right? I mean, this is something I would get into. But my dad was smart enough to say, no, that's not something we're going to get you into. Let's get you to ride a bike instead of a bull or a horse. So I love the country lifestyle, and I love everything about it. But again, I'm a city slicker, so I get to see both of it, right? I get to see both of it. So grew up in Fort Collins, BMX rider, moved to Arizona in 1984. I'm 51. So I've been through a lot of stuff. I'm a little seasoned. I started playing football. I got out of BMX. Again, it just quite wasn't my big thing. I mean, I love doing it. I was good at doing it, but I wanted to follow also my father's footsteps of being a football player, right? And I was too small at that time. I was 5'2", 125 pounds. I probably should have stayed on the bull, right? At that time, that's when I probably should have stayed on, as I would have developed my center of mass and my balance and everything then. But it was one of the things he never did. So being small, playing football is not always a good thing. So I ended up getting kicked out. Not kicked out. I ended up leaving football, and I got into wrestling, right? Because I was a second string quarterback, and that was just something that I didn't want to do. So my dad, I went home and he said, "Son, why don't you wrestle? It's mano a mano. It's you, just it's you against somebody else." So I didn't want to roll around with the sweaty guy. I didn't want to wear the tights and the whole thing. But again, country, tough life. They're wrestlers, they're dogs. You got the steer wrestling and everything else going around, and I didn't see that at that point in time, because as a kid you don't really put the correlation together. So I started wrestling. I had a shoulder injury my senior year. I had to go to physical therapy, and a blessing is that at that point in time I knew that's what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to do physical therapy. I wanted to be able to help people. I wanted to be around athletes. I wanted to be around medicine. And I knew at that time I was the kid that when I was going to college, people asked me, "What did you want to do?" I was the guy that said, "I want to do physical therapy. I want to do exercise science." So from my freshman year in college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So my early sports set me up for who I am today. Now
Cool.
I did have some derailments along the way, which we'll get into that too, right?
Well, we all kind of do. I
For
always say
sure.
And when people say, well, where'd you go to school? I'm like, well, it took me 14 years to get a 7-year degree. So
Right, right, right. Yep. Well, the country lifestyle too, the drinking, right? Drinking and going out at the ranch and hanging out there. I got 6 DUIs, right? I have 6 DUIs, and again, none of my stuff. I was never the victim, right? My dad was drinking. My dad would have a couple of beers. Matter of fact, he said the best thing to drink after your workout. When I was a young kid and I started working out, he's like, the best thing you can have to drink and the best protein shake is a cold beer, right? So I was always thinking, like, probably shit, the beer's probably the best thing to have after working out. Unfortunately, I used it as a party and lifestyle. I was around the athletes in Arizona and the glitz and glamour. So that was kind of one of my times when my life identity or my self identity started to take a change. I was still training and I was still doing some certain things, but I got into drugs. I got into drinking. I got my alcohol. I got my DUIs. I have a lot of high school friends. And now again, when we talk about environment, people think environment's the place that you're at. It's not the places that you're at. It's the people that you're around. And so
Mhm.
I had some high school friends that they were good kids, they were fun kids, but they got to do some illegal stuff. And next thing you know, I was asked to bring some money back from Hawaii, which I went over there, brought a bunch of money back. And 3 months later, I had the feds, the marshals, everybody at my door. I got arrested by the federal marshals, and I got money laundering conviction, and I had to serve 30 months in prison.
Mm.
They put me in court. They put me in quarantine, right? I was the animal of the house, the horse or the cow. They had to put in quarantine, so they put me in quarantine for 30 months, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely a great example of, bad influences can just take you down the wrong
Okay.
road. You can't fly like a eagle when you're with a bunch of turkeys. They're gonna.
No, yeah. Yep, exactly. And again, like I said, it was this, and my mom and dad, I've got great family and I've got great parents. They've been married, they're still married 55 years. My grandfather and my grandmother, I've seen the hard work that they do, the hot toddies in the morning that they would have just because it's cold. Somebody's got to go tend to the cattle. You got to move the cattle out of the way because you got the little baby calf in the kitchen and you got the wood burner stove on. She ain't worried about cooking food. Grandma was worried about keeping the calf warm. So, those are things that I've experienced at a young age, and it just my life took another turn. But at the same time, is that just like with anything else, we got to break a horse in and you got to train him, right? And so when I got out of prison, I was that new trained horse, and I was ready to go to the next show, next rodeo. But then I knew that I was going to be able to stay on for longer than 8 seconds, and I knew I was going to be able to win this event that I was in, and that was my new life.
So tell us a little bit about when you got to prison and like, I mean, what are you telling yourself when you're there? Like, dang, I really effed up this. Yeah.
Yes. Well, having good parents behind it. I get a couple DUIs and I was able to get bailed out of jail and I was able to get bailed out. And so I always look at my parents now and I say, but at that time, you guys were enabling me, right? And they hate to say that because they never really enabled me. And so any parents that are out there listening, even to my kids now, I have to do this because I've got things with my kids going on, but parents aren't there really there to enable your kids. They're there to protect their kids. And that's really it. And so my mom and dad were really just protecting me. Nobody wants to see their kids go to jail. Nobody wants to see their kids get arrested. Nobody wants to go see them go to quarantine or go to prison, right? So it was one of those things that when I knew what I did. Fortunately, during the process after I got arrested, I met who is my current wife now, Jackie. She was bartending. Again, I'm not supposed to be drinking, but I went to the bar, right? I did get 2 DUIs while I was on pretrial release as well, right? So
Mm.
again, I've tested the system. I'm the one that got back up on the bull. I know he's probably this. Yeah, this is a tough one here. This is bodacious. He's a hard one. But I still try to learn. I still that's me. I'm gonna do that because again, that's in my DNA. That's in my DNA. So I went to the bar, and the first time I met this girl, she doesn't drink. She's the bartender that doesn't drink, right? Well, then why are
Mm.
you working in a bar? She's like, well, because I can make money, right? And I asked her out. I told her the first night, I said, I'm going to marry you. And she told me, get in line with everybody else. And she was New Jersey. She wasn't a Scottsdale. She had a little bit of roughness on her, which is kind of probably some of the country that I seen, not the soft, whatever. And so here we are now, 20 years later, we're married. We just had our 16th wedding anniversary.
Mm.
I got out of prison and we still were not married. We weren't even together because she
Mm.
told me at that time, I didn't put myself in prison. I have to continue my life on the outside. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the guy in there with the Dear John letter. I didn't want to worry about what, again, let's go back to, there's somebody in Rockies running around and you wonder whose trailer, where she's at and what's going on. I didn't want to be that guy dealing with that, right? I didn't want to be the guy, urban cowboy all over again. That was not me. So I let this go. I sat there and I did a lot of self-reflection. I learned about who Chad Dunn was, and I learned about what I was going to do to make sure that I never went back into the same situation or this lifestyle again. And that was, again, it's a lot of soul searching, and it's about having a plan. So when I knew I came out, I was going to be a better person than when I went in there. And that's, again, that's really what prison's supposed to be for. I can honestly say I'm one of the guys. I got very fortunate that I did get to come out. But it did what it was supposed to do. It broke me down, and it made me into the man that I am today.
Yeah.
What was it? What was it about prison that what was the actual turning point for you that you decided like, man, this doesn't work for me and then this is how I'm going to stay on track?
Time is the biggest thing. I tell everybody now, if you have 2 years or under, if anybody gets in trouble and they have 2 years or under, they're probably still going to be in the victim mentality. Like I said, I was never the victim, but I was around a lot of victims that were in there. I got screwed. I got framed. Oh, I just got caught. Oh man, that cop had to hit his quota, whatever. But for me, I'm like, I knew I have more to give. And just sitting there, really, it was a waste of my time. I wasn't able to do anything. I made the best of it in there. I trained people. I went to school. I was in a low security prison, so I wasn't around a bunch of crazies. Now, there were at times I was around them all, but I made the best of my time. And after that 2 year mark, I remember I was sitting out back one night in the yard. There was nobody around, and I'm looking out to Mount Graham. It's all country over there. And I'm just sitting there like, man, you've got so much more to give this world than what you are doing, and you're not going to be able to do it in here. And at that point in time, I knew that I was going to be fine. I knew I was going to be fine. I got released probably 8 months later. I had a little bit of time before I had to go to the halfway house, because from prison, you have to go live in a halfway house to make sure you're stable and everything else. So on the way there, my parents, they said, where do you want to go? And I said, let's go by the bar and meet Jackie. Right? I just get out of prison. The first thing I want to do is go to the bar. Not because I want to drink, but because I want to go meet what I thought was going to be my wife. I want to see if she still was interested. And like she said, if it was meant to be, it was meant to be, right? So I walked in there, we seen each other. It was smiles and hugs and everything else. And the rest was history.
Huh. So I heard it was another podcast, and I don't know who they were interviewing, but they were talking about a guy that did some time, and as he was in county jail waiting to go to the state pen, somebody had told him that prison will either make you into an egg, a carrot, or a coffee bean. An egg, you get hard on the inside,
Yeah.
and a carrot, you get soft and weak and
Yeah.
you'll wilt. This is like if you're in boiling water, like think
Sure.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
prison like the boiling water.
Sure.
So you either get to be like a hard-boiled egg and everything gets hard,
Yeah.
or you get to be a carrot and you get broke, you get
Soft.
weak and soft, or you're a coffee bean and you decide you're going to change
Yeah.
things because the
Yep.
coffee bean changes that boiling water. And so
Yep.
you were
I was
like
a
the
coffee
coffee,
bean. I
yeah,
was a
like
coffee bean. Yep.
totally
Yep.
changed you. And
Yep.
so um so at what point did you go to PT school? Was that before or after prison?
So I'm not a PT, and I have not been to PT
Oh,
school. Yep.
okay.
So I was going, and so this is where it's actually even awesome. So I was going to ASU. I was getting my undergrad in exercise science kinesiology. But then I got a job working for a place called Rehab Plus, where we were training athletes, we were doing physical therapy, all the sports stuff. And I thought, well, why am I going to go do an internship and do this for free when I'm already working? Now, this is the late 90s. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to work for the physical therapy joint, but I'm not going to go to PT school. I'll just be a sports performance trainer. And so I've got my certifications. I'm not a licensed PT. I've got all my certifications through the National Academy of Sports Medicines and all that over the years. And so I was basically a sports performance specialist. We had a small private group, my good buddies that I worked with. My buddy Mitch was the therapist that owned the clinic. Warren, the other owner, was a sports performance guy. And so I was watching them, and we built that business, and they built that business from the zero, working together. And I loved it, but again, I was an employee. I was an employee. When I got out of prison, is really when my life changed, and then kind of things started going differently. So I went back to work at Ria Plus the first day that I was out. Again, not a bad guy. I just had bad decisions and made bad choices. They welcomed me back, and these guys, I owe them everything. Even to this day, they're just very, very, very supportive of everything. Eddie King was a BMX guy that I had, broke his back, T11, T12 spinal cord, right? Paralyzed from the waist down. It was in Big Bear, California. I reached out to him on Cambridge Medical. This now, again, I'm clear headed. This is post prison. If there's anything I can do, Eddie, I'd love to work with you, right? I just reached out on a whim. Sure enough, I get a message about 3 months later or 3 weeks later. It says, "Hey, I'm moving to Arizona and I want to know if you'd be able to work with me." I was like, "Right on, let's go." So he came willing in. Now, this point in time, I'm the new me and I got my own identity, right? I'm here to help people and change people. Working with my guys I was with, they take insurances. Well, Eddie had a foundation, so I was getting paid out of his foundation. I didn't have to worry about the insurance. I didn't have to worry anything about that. So it was more of a hybrid, more of a one-on-one, and he's working with me. Also, I had a therapist intern that went to school, and she went down to the Arizona burn unit and she became a head therapist down at the burn unit. So she would send me, or I got a lot of people that were burn survivors. And so I had one specifically that came down. So I had Eddie paralyzed. I had Anthony, who was on fire for 2.5 minutes trying to come back from these fires. And then I had a Phoenix police officer, a Maricopa County Sheriff's officer that was shot point blank trying to save a Phoenix police officer. So these are three catastrophic injuries and three crazy cases. I wanted every one of them, right? Because if I can rehabilitate them, they're rehabilitating me. And I want to give them the new life that I was just given. So I took, yeah. So I took that, and I was more the mental guy. Physically, I can learn this shit on Instagram right now or on YouTube or whatever, how to do something. But like, you have to be able to relate it, and you have to understand why you're doing these exercises and why these protocols are out there. I'm a lifelong learner. I learned a lot while I was in there. I do not watch TV because in prisons where fights start is around the TV. And even at home, fights start at home and around the TV. Give me the controller, the husband and wife or the kids, they bitching back and forth, right? So I take my time at night times and I study, and I'm a very, 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 very big component of being self-taught, right? So all through my certifications, I'm working with Eddie and these guys, and I just knew I had more to offer the world, and I knew I had more to offer people. I couldn't do it being an employee. So I had two guys. My wife was one, and then my wife was one, and I had another client that had Luis that was with PetSmart. He was executive, and he said, "Why don't you open up your own thing?" So the brain started going. The brain started twisting a little bit. Like, what can we do? Um, Put a business plan together. How are you going to do this? Uber came around, and so did Lyft. They're not cabs. So I was the Uber and the Lyft to physical therapy. I am not a physical therapist, but I will get you from point A to point Z, and I'll make sure I get you better. I've gotten this paralyzed guy to walk again. I've gotten this burn survivor to come back. I've got this gunshot. I'm not going to take insurance because I can't take insurance. I'm not regulated by that, but I will be able to do corrective exercises. I can do everything. I can buy a STEM machine. Anybody can buy a STEM machine. So I put a business plan together. The business plan was also put into action when I actually had another job interview with a medical sales company, and I got turned down for having a felony. So
Wow.
now my future is in my own hands, right? These bad choices that you made, now you're going to be stuck in what your career is going to be. There's only one way that, and again, if you were an inmate or somebody that had to go through these tough times and you have a record, there's only one way that I look at it, and you have to put your life in your own hands. And so I did. I said, I'm going to open up Move Human Performance Center, not physical therapy at first. It would just Move Human Performance. And our logo that we have, this is the handicap guy, right? It's a
Oh,
disabled guy, but it's also the athlete emotion, right? So it was all based upon the principle is I'm going to take anybody and everybody, as long as that you want to get back and you want to get better, I'm going to get you there, right? And I had 3 good cases. So I opened up Move. I was doing the treatment stuff. Everything was doing well. Again, the opening was a hard thing because I went to the bank and I got turned down from a business loan because you're a convicted felon.
yeah.
So now you have to go to outside resources. And I looked at angels investors and the interest rates. I did go back to my dad, who is, again, a country guy, but he lost his business, or they lost their business in 82 when that whole big recession happened. So he was very fearful of being a business owner. He was like, "Son, are you ready to lose everything, including your wife and your house and your family?" I'm like, "Dad, I already did it about 7 years ago when I went to prison. I don't worry about starting over. I've done this before. I'm not going to have to start over. I'm going to build an empire is what I'm going to do." And so then he bought in, and he ended up loaning me the money. That was 9 years ago. And here we are 9 years later. We now have 2 physical therapists. I have a physical therapist assistant that's on staff. We've got 7 employees. I've got another trainer that works with me, and we're growing every day.
Yeah. Well, I find your story so inspiring because, what Destry and I are doing, there aren't a whole lot of people in the equine world doing it. We do a lot of, I'm a physical therapist, he's an athletic trainer, and we do horse and rider wellness, and it's it's very unique. It's very hard to tell people what you do, like, what are
Mhm.
you? What do and people don't really know what even physical therapy is for themselves, let alone for their horse. And
Correct.
so there are so many days where it's like, okay, you're doing something that isn't done very often. Like, how did you handle like the moments where life just kind of slaps you in the face, and or a big wave comes
Yeah.
crashing over you, and how do you keep your mental game strong when you're doing something that nobody else has really done?
Yeah, well, everyone said, they said, well, Chad, how are you going to open up a physical therapy clinic when you're not a physical therapist? Don't you have to be a physical therapist to open up a clinic? I go, no, you don't have to. You can open up a clinic, except for you can't bill insurances, right? And so that was really the big thing. But I can't call it physical therapy either. So what I had to do is I had to hire physical therapists, right? So that's how we became the non-provider owner. It's ups and downs. It's like, when somebody comes to visit you in a prison, man, all the highs, the lows, you get to see your loved ones and everything, but then you also get to see them walk out the door, and you don't get to leave with them. So you handle some of these feelings and some of these situations that we put ourselves into. They're learning experiences. Everything that I've been into is a learning experience, right? The darkest days that I had as a drug user, the darkest days of sitting in the prison or being on Con Air, being flown from Oklahoma to San Bernardino County, because I had to go to Oklahoma for the major transfer center. So they flew me on Con Air from Arizona, and I landed in Oklahoma City. Never touched down, right? We walked right into the jet ramp into the jail. Timothy McVeigh, the Unabomber, all those guys are there. So, I'm just like, man, what an experience, what an experience. So when my darkest days or when anything happens here now in life, it's like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Stressful is being dropped off for a self-surrender, knowing that you might not see your loved one for the next 30 months or whatever, you know. But the biggest thing that I do is I make conscious choices. I fully trust myself because I've done certain things to overcome these. You know, I don't have any issues with any choices because every choice that I make is one that's made with thought. Part of my story, I've got my tattoo was on my arms, the whole thing, but this one here, it says, my every move is a calculated step. Think before you do. Think before you do. I study the plays. It's just like somebody that's going to get on a bull. I've got to study the bull. He's going to come out to shoot. He's going to take 2 hops to the right. He's going to turn back. I've got to study him if you're going to be able to conquer him. So everything that I do is all through preparation. And I think that's the biggest keys. I don't think that people spend enough time. I think the phone and we get caught up in all these daily things. And I think if we really start lacking our days of preparation, I think that's really the biggest thing.
Well, and I think people think it's going to be easier than it actually is. Like, I don't know that they're necessarily prepared for the the hurdles that get thrown in front of them,
Oh
like,
yeah.
and so they get to one and then they're like, oh, what do I do? And there's so many days where I think, dang, it would be so much easier to go just get a real job, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
and yeah, and safer,
yeah.
and but I do a little PRN work at a local
Yeah.
nursing home because they need help and
Sure. And they'll
help.
pay. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and for us, it's hard too because we're outpatient orthopedic, so you can make more money as a PT going to inpatient and doing neuro stuff and whatever. So now, we pay less, but we give you a better environment and we give you a better job to do. You can get paid more money, but the reason why the hospitals are paying that big money is because nobody wants to go do those jobs. And so,
Yeah.
the handoff is 50-50, but it's what part of your life or what part of your career that you're willing to take, and again, that's, we've been able to I've got most of my 2 PTs that are here, they were out of school, newly grads. So we've kind of molded them a little bit. But again, at the same time, is I tell them, I said, you guys have a doctorate in physical therapy. I don't. You guys know more about this shit than I do. I don't know this, but I've got a lot of experience. And so I always revert back to them. I'm the janitor. I'm the low man on the totem pole. My wife owns it, and she does everything and she runs everything. And then I always go to my therapist because, again, I understand what it's like to be a therapist. I understand the schooling. I understand the authority and everything. It's hard for me as a person that's a sports performance guy to go tell this. And again, I don't want to undervalue what they've done for schooling. Mine is just mine's all through experience. And so it's kind of cool to have everything work synergistically in here. But we do get a variety of neuro cases and burns, and so we're not just your normal outpatient orthopedic clinic.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's just, no matter what letters are behind your name, there is no substitute for experience. I mean, the fact that people have went through a program and everything else, you're right. They put a ton of work into that. They were taught certain things that we weren't taught. But it is not just always about the letters behind your name, I don't think. I mean, the fact that you have the experience that you do and the experience that I do, and then Becky with all her years of experience in PT,
Yep.
it all molds together to help these people. And when you have people pulling on the same chain trying to get people better from all different backgrounds, sometimes you need that. Sometimes if one person gets stuck, you need that other person's experience to keep things moving forward. And I think that just having that mindset of everybody has a place, everybody brings something to the table, and your experience is just as important as whether there's letters or not behind your
Yeah.
name. I think is a very important thing to remember and help us all stay together to help people get better.
Yeah. And it's, in my book, I talk about your character is more important than your credentials.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've worked with some great therapists that have no credit, that have just gotten out of school and whatever. And I've worked with some therapists that have everything's, behind them all, and they can't treat for shit.
Yeah.
Just to say
They
it.
don't
So
care.
they don't care. And again, unfortunately, I hate to say it, that's thankful to the insurance. The PT's gotten so rough just because of what the insurances are going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for. We don't take United. We're with everybody else. We dropped United. We don't take United. I wish we could go to all cash prices. We're not quite there yet, and Arizona's not at that level. But it's a discount card. The insurance is a discount card, and people do use it. And so we have people that, we have cash prices for the ones that don't want to use insurance. But again, I see a lot of therapists over the years. When I got into this, it was $240 a reimbursement, for one session. Right now I think it's 65, from United. So now I've got 4 times as many people I have to see, and I've got 4 times as much staff, and you can't make the money. The athletic training field, is the same way, is that they get you to go get your master's in athletic training. You're going to get it at a school, or you'll be able to go somewhere. But like, what am I going to be able to do after that? That's kind of a hard thing. So, being able to find the other niches that you have and being able to make the extra income. And that's what we've done, just because insurances regulate our career so much, we wanted to put in, we got cryotherapy here. So we have cryotherapy as well. So we do the local cryo. We have a nitrogen free take. So I've put different services that are inside according to sports performance. So it's, we've got therapy, we've got cryo, we do dry needling. So we do everything. And so we just have ancillary services so that we can offset some of the costs,
Yeah.
and provide good care.
Yeah, let's talk about the cryotherapy. I seen that. I was checking out your Facebook page, and so it's full body cryotherapy. They just kind of walk in this chamber, and is it like 200 degrees below zero or something like?
These are 100 and negative 121. Yep, negative 121. So most of the other cryo tanks that you see where your head is out of nitrogen, the nitrogen tanks, you guys might even use the nitrogen cryos for the horses that they have. But nitrogen's a gas that you're not supposed to be breathing. So that's why your head is out in those tanks. They are negative 181. I think they're a little bit colder. But again, me personally, and again, I think on a different level, your head is the computer. If your head isn't in there, then how effective is it? Because it's not going through and releasing the serotonin, the dopamine, the norepinephrine. It's not stimulating that fight or flight response. It might be cold, cold plunges. You're trying to get to the brainstem as far as you can. Again, what's the effective rate of it if your head's not in there? So these Mecotech, it's out of Europe. It's a German company. I busted up my knee, tore my meniscus screwing around, and so I had to get some therapy and da. But I had some swelling that was residual. I couldn't get rid of it. I had an infection in my leg prior, so the doctor said he wasn't going to drain it. So I went to my buddy's place that had a cryo tank, and he had one of the nitrogen ones. So I did that. I felt good. But again, we're always looking for the competitive advantage. This one happened to come out. Mind you, we opened Move in 2017. In 2020, there was a thing called COVID. Most businesses don't make 3 years. COVID was our 3-year mark, right? I've overcome prison. I've overcome that. I'm not worried about COVID. We just hired our therapist. So now we are medical necessity, right? So we got to stay open. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. So now we became one of the only places really in Arizona that stayed open, right? I had a lady that had a birth control thing on her leg and blood clot. She didn't tell nobody, had to go in there. It was a nasty, nasty surgery. Almost lost her leg from it. If we would have been shut down, she would have had her leg amputated, right? So we stayed open for COVID purposes to help people. And during that time, that's when this company got important because they had to ship the COVID vaccines from overseas, right? And so they made these solar panel coolers that were negative 121 with this cooling technology, and they took that and they made it into cryo tanks.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool thing. You go in there for 6 minutes. Normal body temperature, we use a laser, you're about 88 degrees of surface temperature when you go in there. After about 6 minutes, you come out at about 52 to 48. So it drops your body temperature about 40, 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool though. You got earphones, you got music and all that. So if you can listen to 3 songs, you'll be okay. You'll be
Yeah.
okay.
So do you help like mentally prepare them to be able to sit? Because like I just think about us doing the cold plunge, and it took me to kind of psych myself up before I did that. Do you help like mentally prepare people to get into the crowd?
Yeah, I don't do cold water. I will not do a cool plunge. I'll jump in the cryo all day long because it's that cold that touches the skin, right? It's the first initial shock, it's breathing. It's really breathing. So you got to just learn to meditate, learn to control your breathing, learn to let everything happen. That is the same feeling I had when I walked into prison. Take the deep breath, lower your heart rate. Everything's going to be okay. You got to be able to process your brain, even in situations, the mental that I get back in the shoot, before I get ready to go, whatever it is, it's all about breathing. Everything goes back into breathing. So talking to them, don't be moving around in there. And some people move around like it's cold and jumping around, but I tell them just chill, meditate, put your eyes down. You got 6 minutes. Yeah, you've got 6 minutes to just breathe, focus not on the pain, focus on why you are doing something, and again, I think that just goes with life in general as well. Focus on why you are doing something, and I think you'll be able to conquer anything.
Yeah. So this kind of gets me to my things that I want to talk about. So
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners are barrel racers, okay?
Yeah.
And so like the mental side of competition and preparation. Like so yesterday I went back to the arena and did my first competition for 2 months. And I was good until I entered, they have the arena, they have the holding pen, and then they have the warm-up area. I went from the warm-up area to the holding pen when they're calling my name. And it's so amazing to me, like how quickly those little thoughts of doubt creep in there. And I thought, I'm walking up the into the holding pen going, you haven't done this for 2 months. And the last time you did this, you wiped out with your horse. And like all this stuff is going through my mind. And I am like, nope, you can't do it. I'm sure I look like an idiot, but like I'm telling myself, no, you cannot let this little devil be telling you this stuff. And so literally as I am getting ready, making my circle in the holding pen to then take off and go, I am out loud telling myself the one thing that I need to do to make my run successful, and that's hold my outside rate. So if people were really watching my lips in as I'm getting ready to go, I am literally saying, hold your outside rate.
Yep.
But it is what I needed to do because I couldn't remember 50 million things that I needed to do, even though that's what happens. Like
Yeah.
the one thing. So like as I think a lot of people struggle with that mental prep before competition, and how do you overcome the mental those little demons that want to tell you like you're not good enough, you're not, blah blah blah. Like any words of advice for people
Well,
from that?
yeah, chapter 1 that I have is, but it's based off self-identity. Know who you are. Know who you are. And that's the biggest thing. Know who you are. Are you a badass barrel racer, or are you just somebody out there riding barrels, going around them? First thing, you have to talk to yourself. You have to know why you're out there. Now, at the same time, though, is I also, and I ask these kids and people I train, how many times has somebody called you or told you that you're something that you're really not? You're a loser, you're not good, you're late to the game, you're whatever. So people try to tell us these things, but you can't believe them. Some people do believe them. I didn't believe that I was a criminal. I didn't believe that I was an inmate because I knew I just made bad choices. And so if I believed them, I got 6 DUIs. They told me I was an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic. I just love to party. Right. I was the guy that had to drive. I was at the bar, I was at the last guy to leave the arena, but I was at work the next day, the first guy at work. Right. And I never left my car. That was my bad choice. I should have taken a cab, but I was responsible. I had to get home the next day to go to work. Unfortunately, it got me where I was at. But they told me I was an alcoholic. If they told me I was an alcoholic, I would not be where I was today. My last class when I got out, he talked about alcoholisms and alcoholic, drug addict, gambling addict. He said, none of you guys, you're never going to hear me use the word addict in here. He said, everybody in here, y'all make bad choices. And at that point in time, it's about know who you are. You are the one that is in control. It's your choice to grab that outside rein. If you want to sit too far on the inside of the saddle, that's your choice to get there. But maybe you were afraid you were too far off balance on the outside. So you made the minor adjustment. You didn't need to. Practice, 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 practice. I tell these guys, I prepare for my day every day. I have a plan. I have protocols of all my patients that are coming in that I'm working with, or the ones that I'm going to be working with. I know what they did last time. I know what the run was. I know how many seconds I was off. I knew if I went too wide on the barrel. But you do this by tunneling your vision in and to see what that goal is. There's outside cueing. I call it irrelevant cueing, and there's relevant cueing. Irrelevant cueing is, man, I hope this run goes good. I hope the barrel doesn't get knocked over. I don't want to get penalized. I hope we have a straight shot to the finish. Where the relevant cueing is, hey, sit here, Becky, you got this. I'm not thinking about anything except for making the best run possible. But how many times is it hard for us, or how many times does our voice in our head hear external noises, right? You hear it all the time, like, I don't know if I should do the step up on that box. It seems a little high. I don't know if I can bend my knee. I just had my ACL. These are voices telling you can't do something. So when you learn to ignore the noise, and that's through focus and concentration, then you become more powerful in your own decision making, and then that becomes into your abilities.
Love it.
Yeah, when I was going through school, every prerequisite trying to get into PT school, which I ended up going to athletic training school, but all the prerequisites to get into PT school had so much psychology. And I was like, man, I'm trying to like learn about the body and stuff. And why do I need to know about all this psychology and all these hours of that? And then you get in your career and you're like, wait a minute. I mean,
Psychologist.
this deal this deal is mental. I mean, you have to help people realize that, yes, it's okay for that knee to bend. And yes, you can do this, and you can run the race, and you can finish. And, no matter what you end up doing, as soon as you put yourself in a box, other people put you in that same box. And so, that's not a good place to be.
No, labels. People put labels on themselves all the time. Or people put labels on other people, right? And then they tell them that, hey, let's read the label. This is who you are. That's not true. That's not true. You are who you are.
Or we imagine that
Yeah.
they're saying things, like a friend and I were talking about, like, if we hadn't been working out, like, we feel fat, or we feel, we don't feel like we can go compete if we haven't done the work. And you think everybody else thinks, they look at you and you're like, oh, dang, she's a fat, tubby thing. Why is she out here? But they're just running their own race. Like, we imagine so much more that people really aren't doing. Like, we have that negative self-talk, and we just really have to be kinder to ourselves.
Sure.
And we do have to be mentally tough.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't talk to somebody else the same way we talk to ourselves.
No, I always ask the kids too. I ask them, I said, have you ever found your soulmate? Or I ask people all the time, do you know who your soulmate is? And they look at me like, no, I haven't found him yet. I'm not married, or I don't have a significant other. And I tell them, I say, well, what if I tell you that your soulmate could be your worst critic? Who's your soulmate? Your soulmate's you. You have to learn to love yourself. You have to learn to love yourself. We are looking for our soulmate out there at the bars and wherever it is, but your soulmate is you. When you love yourself, It's amazing the things that can happen, and that's one of the things I do is that, with the time that I had, and even just me as a person, I'm very confident in things. Obviously, that grew up with the BMX riding to go over the jumps and to do all the thrills and everything else. But confidence has never been my problem. Matter of fact, confidence is what gets me in trouble because I know I can get out of the situation as well too, right? So like, shit, I knew I was confident to get to shoot. Now I'm stuck. I gotta go. I gotta go. But that goes to JB Maroney too. So I always use like JB when they always talk about JB, this badass bull rider and everything else, and he's this tough cowboy. He's like, but here's the thing. I grew up riding things, I didn't just grow up on a barrel. I grew up riding sheep and the lambs and moving and everything gets moved up. He goes, and so now I study my bulls. We talk about working out and getting stronger mentally, right? Is it physically or mentally stronger? What's a bull weigh? 1,800 pounds, 1,400 pounds, something such as,
I think more
depending
than
on.
like a
Uh,
ton, usually 2,000 or more.
2000 and a bull rider is maybe 140. You know what I mean? They can lift as many weights as they want to, but they're never going to be as strong as that opponent. And now again, which one's the athlete? The bull the athlete, or is the cowboy the athlete, right? They're both are. The bull's got to be strong, the bull's got to be powerful, and the bull's got to have balance. Well, that's the three things that the cowboy's got to have to be able to win. But there's no way I can physically implement a regimen for exercise or fitness or whatever to get the cowboy to be as strong to beat that opponent. So what JB Maroney says, he stands on the basketball for 2 hours a day and he learns to dance with the bull. There you go. When problems happen, learn to dance with them. We're not trying to deflect them, or we're not trying to move away from them. We're trying to dance with them. And I think that's a great metaphor. I'll use that with all of my kids that come down here, when they're doing the stuff. I always go back to JB in the video when he's over there eating lunch, standing in cowboy boots and everything, eating a sandwich, standing on top of a basketball. I love it.
Okay, now I'm going to ask my second question.
Go for it.
I'm getting some free advice here, right?
No.
So I'm 52 years old and my metabolism is tanking. Yes, I do work out, but you cannot outwork a bad diet. And I
Okay.
love food. So like
Yeah.
mental toughness, mental, I know it's mental, like really like making choices to eat good or I'm kind of like you, like I love to go out and have a good time with
Yeah.
my friends
Sure.
and like making yourself make those good choices in bad situations. For me it's food, like for somebody else it might be alcohol, it might be hanging out with the bad crowd because they're kind of the fun crowd. Like
Yep.
how do you make yourself really you know, eat the vegetables instead of the good chimichanga at the Mexican
I,
restaurant.
I have not, the last 6 weeks, I have never eaten this good in my life, right? So I've got a pretty good metabolism. Like I said, I'm 51. I stay in good shape, and I'm one of the guys, I try to be stronger than the fastest runner my age. And I try to be faster than the strongest person my age. So I'm the kind of the hybrid guy that's right in the middle of it, right? I went out yesterday. I think my longest run I just ran was 14 miles. I'm 240 pounds, which 240-pound kids should not be running 14 miles. But again, that's the only way I can free my mind and I can do this. With the food aspect, I've got one thing that I always tell everybody. Nothing tastes as good as sexy looks, right? Now, again, it doesn't matter at what point of our life that we're at. Nothing tastes as good as sexy looks because we're the ones that are looking ourselves in the mirror like, I don't know where this little bulge come from or whatever. I told my wife the other day, I said, I started to get a little bit of love handles. It's summertime, it's hot. I haven't been running as much out here. And so I started changing, we're starting to run, and she's doing this high rocks competition here in January. So she's been working out. I've had like this, I eat like stalks of celery. I've never eaten stalks of celery. I think last week I had 3 stalks of celery. I had like 4 cucumbers. I had cucumbers and shrimp for lunch today, which normally would have been a chimichanga or 3 carne asados tacos. You just have to get started on the first one. One of my good mentors I have, it's called One in a Row, right? And so he teaches a lot of basketball players. You can use this with anything. In order to be a good basketball player, you have to learn by making one in a row. You want to be a good barrel racer, you got to get around one barrel at a time and do one in a row. If you do that 3 times over, you're going to make it out the arena. Bull riding, I got to start for 1 second and then go for another next one in a row. So I always do it. Everything is one in a row. I'm going to start tomorrow. My breakfast, perfect. You get up tomorrow, you have a good breakfast, whatever it is. Now you're not going out for lunch and getting the hamburgers, the double cheeseburger. You got to make it one in a row and you got to continue that. So by the end of the day, you should have 4 meals roughly or 3 meals, but I got 3 or 4 good ones and they all came one in a row. It's all one in a row. But remember, nothing tastes as good as sexy looks.
I love that. That quote is going up on my mirrors.
Good, good, good. Yeah, that's what I always have. Right? That's what I always have.
Yeah, I guess I'll put that on the fridge then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Uh-huh. That's it. When they go in there to reach in for it all. I don't know about this one. I don't know. And it's hard though, because again, lifestyles also, I mean, there's always good food. We can always eat good food. It's just the additives that we add on to it all. And, are we emotional eating? Are we emotional drinking? Those are things. But like when we gain that big power of self-confidence and self-reflection and even self-awareness, we know what we want to be. It's just a matter of doing it, and I knew that I could be somebody. It's just a matter of doing it. Weight loss is hard though. Weight loss is hard as we get older. I'm 51 and it doesn't fall off as easy. Nowadays you got everybody on the hormone replacements and doing all that stuff, which again, I've seen some pretty good success for it. I think it's still pretty raw and I think it's still very fresh with everything. So I try to stay away from it. My dad, obviously the country lifestyle, you're around all the horse medicine all day long or whatever, and you could do it. But my dad says, through hard work, that's how you're going to do it. That's what he did. And that's how you do it. He was chucking kegs on his lunch break when he was down at the bar or whatever, it's hard work. And so he told me, he goes, if I ever find out you did any, enhancements or anything else, he goes, I'll physically just whoop the shit out of you. So I've always myself is I'm going to do it all natural. And I'm going to do it the hard way, But again, as we get through with the physiology now, and we know that the longevity right now, this is a huge thing for vitality at our ages as we get older. It's becoming more well out there. They're doing all the biohacking and all the biocoding and changing. It's true. It's out there. It's very good, but there's still an unknown. It's like using stem cells. When Eddie was the first one, when he got offered, he got offered to use some stem cells for his spinal cord, but he's like, Chad, I didn't want to do that because let's say that I did that and that hindered what I might be able to have for a future treatment in the future. But they say I couldn't do that because you went and you used the stem cells so early on that it hinders you. So he goes, no, I'll wait for time, And so again, if I'm 80 years old and I need some hormones or something, shit, I'll think about taking them then, But hey, we still keep going until, right?
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about your book. Tell us the title again, and what was the motivating factor to write the book, and give us a little preview of what we could expect if we buy it.
Yep. So we put this all together. Obviously, it goes back, you got to understand your DNA. So I start off with my book, and chapter 1 is knowing your DNA, knowing who you are. My great-great-grandfather set out from Kentucky on horseback at the age of 13, rode a horse all the way to Colorado, to Silverton, Colorado, and searched for gold, right? That's the adventure. That's the horse. That's been in my blood, right? Forever. So when I opened up Move, I sat down with this lady. I had a client that's like, Chad, I was helping her with a shoulder. She had a labrum surgery. So I was helping her with the rehab. And she's like, Chad, I think this is a great, I mean, your story is just unbelievable. I think you should talk to my friend and write this book. Unfortunately, starting Move and being financially strapped and everything, I had to put that on hold. For my 50th birthday, my wife, she got a hold of Laura, the publisher, and she said, we're ready to write this book. So it was my birthday gift given to me. I know that I'm going to use it. It's my new tool to get out. I want to be on stage. Everybody wants to be a social media influencer. I want to be an inspirer. I want to be able to inspire you. I'm not here to influence you. The shit that I've done, you should not be influenced by my stories, but I hope that I can inspire you from my stories. So I spent 16 months writing this book. It's been great. I have a ghostwriter that helped me write it. He's country. He's from Payson, so he's got some similarities in there, which was good. He's also a sports guy, so everything came out real well. It's 10 codes. It's mind over virtual everything. Obviously, my company Move is MOVE. It doesn't stand for nothing. It stands for Eddie. Eddie has to get moving. It doesn't have to get stronger. In PT, we can work on flexibility, we can work on range of motion, but at the end of the day, what we're looking at, we're trying to get somebody moving. That's how you improve a quality of life, is to move. So I called it Move. I was driving one day and I thought, what's the acronym for Move? Is there an acronym for Move? And I came out with mind over virtual everything. Right. So, okay. So that catches, that's kind of clicky. So there is not the periods. It's not a metaphor. It is just pure Move, but it's mind over virtual everything. As soon as you walk in our clinic, we have mind over virtual everything on the wall. If your mind's not right, your body's not going to be right. you know.
Yeah.
So putting this book out, it's 10 codes to transform your life. You know, the one that we were just kind of talking about, you and how to do this stuff. I'm going to tell you, be optimistic about making these changes with the food and everything that you're going to have. My fourth code that I have in my book is adopting the optimistic mindset is the best strategy for overcoming adversity and discovering new opportunities, right?
Mhm.
So you got to be optimistic, not pessimistic, right? We get caught in this pessimistic world where, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow. Or, you know what, why does this always happen to me? So everything that I do is with energy, is with optimism, you know, because again, I trust myself. Injuries, I let all my patients, my clients know you're going to be back fine because I believe in you. You know, I believe in you. And they say, well, how do you know you believe in me? You don't even know me. I'm like, because I believe in myself. And if I'm the one that's helping you do something, I guarantee you that us as a team, two is a lot more powerful than one, right? And so I'm very optimistic with everybody. So in this book, I've got 10 codes to transform your life. Um, it came out great. It goes through your DNA. Again, I don't drink. I haven't drank since I got my last DUI in 2007. My dad, you sure you don't want a beer? That's the country lifestyle. Dad, I don't want a beer. I'm good with that, right? Matter of fact, I was on pre-child. I wasn't supposed to be drinking. I came home one day and my dad, I got home from work. My dad says, here, have a beer. First thing you should do is have a beer. Within 30 minutes, my probation officer came and she gave me a breath test. I failed my breath test. Now, my
Mhm.
dad wasn't trying to get me to fail it, but that's just the country lifestyle, right? Have a beer, have a beer. You're good, right? So again, sometimes we have to go against our own DNA, right? I can't do that. I used to chew Copenhagen. I had Copenhagen all day long, About 10 years ago, I quit chewing Copenhagen just off the whim. These are things, it's the power of the mind. It's the power of the mind. So I brought this into my book. You can go to counseling, you can go to self-help. We have all these classes, you have all that stuff. And we've tried. I know people, I was tried even before I got in trouble. We try all these things, but like they just don't work because I wasn't looking at myself. Yourself, you're the only one that's going to make it work. So I took easy codes that I have proven by doing it and I put them in the book and I have a great one that's coming out. October 25th, October 28th is when it's released on Amazon.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there like pre-sales? Like if somebody went now, could they go and do
If you are
pre-sales?
an ebook reader,
Okay.
uh, I'll give you a little insight. The pre-launch, it will be October 20th, but the ebook I think is only going to be available. If you buy the ebook, it'll be for 99 cents. And then you have to leave a review on Amazon about the book or whatever, so I can get my algorithm and get the book going. My publisher, she wants to try to get me to be an Amazon #1 bestseller with this thing. But for me, I'm trying to be a New York Times bestseller, right? I don't settle for the bronze medal. I'm trying to get to the high one. So again, if you're going to shoot for the moon, shoot for the moon. So there will be it's a pre-launch that's out there, but I'll let you know kind of firsthand. If you guys are ebook readers, you can download, you can buy it on Amazon for 99 cents, October 20th, that first week. Just leave a review on Amazon and that'll help boost me up on the rankings. But yes, it will be. If not, it will be on the 28th officially is where it'll be launched on Amazon.
Okay.
If you guys
Well,
come, I've got a book signing party on November 1st out here in Arizona. If you guys have a chance, come on.
oh,
Yeah. So, we're
that'll
gonna
be
have
fun.
so we'll have a little big shindig. And like I said, I just want to use this as tools. Every chapter that I have is a tool that I can give a speech for or things that people talk about. We talk about diet stuff, a lot of it's the mental side of it all. A lot of it's about overcoming adversity. The glass is half empty or half full. I see the glass is overflowing, right?
Mm.
But everybody sees the glass is half empty or half full. I'm like, no, every day is a day of opportunity. So your glass should always be filled. It should be overflowing, overflowing, overflowing. So again, just little different scenarios that gets the body to think. But at the end of the day, the story is not about me. It's about not my transformation. I'm just showing you my transformation. At the end of the day, the story is about you and you making yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. I'm excited about the book. I will mark it on my calendar to
It's a
I,
good one. Yeah,
yeah,
it is a good one.
I'm excited to read it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it is good. So, but yeah, that's I've got a guy right now. It's a sad story, young kid, it's 23, 24 right now. Baby had some domestic violence stuff. Him and his girlfriend got in a fight, had to get out of the house. He tried to commit suicide by lighting his car on fire and driving it off a cliff. The cliff did have a car wreck. Unfortunately, it didn't knock him out and didn't kill him. So he got out of the car. It was in Tucson, so they couldn't get him in. It was rainy that night. They had to ambulance him up to Phoenix, 2.5 hours away. When he got to the hospital, he had a 2% chance of living. You know, he had a 2% chance of living. So my friend Danica, she said, you got to go see Chad. They want him to go see a counselor. They want him to go see a whole bunch of these psychiatrists and psychologists. But she knows through what I've done and through being around me, go see Chad. So we did work with him, yes, on all of his skin grafts and spasticity and everything else. But realistically, it's more mental therapy, you know, when he comes down here. The reason why I have tattoos, I had no tattoos when I went to prison. I got all my tattoos when I got out of prison because when I started working with my burn survivors, they have scars, right? And so my tattoos are my scars. I told them they're going to look at us differently. Yours might be raised skin grafts and new things. I said, but they're going to look at me. Some people don't like tattoos, but all your scars will tell a story, you know? So working with JJ, he's been with me now for about 2 years. He just had his number, I think 19th surgery on his hands and skin grafts and all that. You know, to make a value, make a difference in somebody's life, you know. I know why I'm here on this land and to be able to help people,
Mhm.
even in
Yeah.
Nebraska, even in Oklahoma.
Yeah. That's really our calling, is to help people just get back to doing the things that they love,
Yeah.
and that's why I feel about my journey. People might think, well, riding a horse isn't that important for people. Well, it really is. For a lot of people, it's their mental health
But
therapy. And if they can't do it, man, they are mentally
yeah,
fried. Then they start arguing with their spouse, they kick the dog, and
yep,
everything.
yep.
So we're trying to help them stay
Yes.
as mentally good as possible, and yeah, that's why we do.
Yeah, and we, you know, we're in the healthcare, you know, and it's why we're in the healthcare because we care. That's why, you know, we care about health. And again, it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be your physical. I mean, there's so many things that are component with the health aspect of it all. But somebody also needs to go through it, and somebody has to be there to tell them that they'll be fine, you know. So when we have our athletes that are here working next to the burn survivors, you know, obviously, you know, you have no other option. There's no other option except for to kick ass, you know. And I think that's the country way. I think that's the country way is, you know, to be able to give that back and, you know, hard life, you know, ranch life is hard life, you know, but hard life creates hard men, you know, and hard women. And when you have hard men and hard women, I feel that we're unstoppable. So, you know, it's good to be able to give back and to be able to reach the people. And I'm sure you guys are the same way. And, you know, I'd like to know what y'all do for the therapy with the horses. You know, what do you guys do for equine therapy? What's that all entitled?
It is, to me, it is so cool. Like the things that I'm learning, you find trigger points, and the trigger points correlate with different areas of the body that are painful. You have to read their body language
Mhm.
and how, okay, they're grumpy when you throw the saddle on them. Why is it? Is it the saddle doesn't fit, or do they have what's called kissing spine, where the vertebrae actually are touching each other, and there's pain there. And so you're learning their new language, and then you use soft tissue work, use joint mobilization, myofascial release, you stretch them, you do all the physical therapy things that you do to a person,
Mhm.
but you're just applying it to a four-legged animal. And the difference is they can't tell you where they hurt. So,
Right.
you have to learn that language. And it's been a really fun journey for me this year. I sold my brick and mortars PT practice January 1st. And so now I'm all just cash based, doing people
Love it.
and horses. And it's been an amazing learning year for me. And just
Mhm.
having I mean, I've probably at least tripled the number of horses that I've worked on this year.
It's awesome.
Um, so it's been fun getting just more repetitions and putting more things together. Just, like you do with people, the more people you see, the more you learn.
Sure.
And it's
Can you dry, do you dry needle? Do you dry needle horses? Yeah.
I am
Or
in the process of, so it's a different certification. I do my own, I
sure,
kind of
sure. Yeah.
playing around on my own. So I'm in the certification process of dry needling for horses. So
That'd be kind of cool. Kind
yeah,
of cool.
it's been a really fun journey for sure.
Well, you know, I mean, and to put on back to, you know, as a kind of the big circle, you know, as I had a patient here who's a farrier, and he just got done. He was doing the team roping, and he had a labrum shoulder surgery, rotator cuff. He was about 5 months post-op. He went back to riding again. Soft spot in the arena floor. Horse went down. He went over the top of it. Brachial complex got all destroyed. Ulnar nerve got destroyed. Left hand paralysis, whatever. But now again, he's got to go back and do his job. He's a farrier. Now you got to do it with 1.5 hands, with 1.5 hands. And
Yeah.
he's a beast. He used to do some stuff at Ohio State, and he does all the specialty stuff, whatever. And it was kind of cool because when he came in as a patient, I was talking to him. If somebody's foot is off, obviously we go to orthotics and we do everything, but the foot has got to sit flat. And so I was going through this is years ago. I'm like, it's kind of like a horse. If you shoe a horse wrong, they're gonna come up lame. You got to make sure that everything's flat. And so I use the horse's foot and I go back into the human's foot. And so I do dictate back and forth. Your shoe has got to be flat like a horseshoe, or I can obviously build it up and they can put the wedges and do whatever. But going back and talking to the farrier about it all, it was so cool just to learn it all. Shit, I got bottles of DMSO that we use back here still. So I go to the feed. I got DMSO. I dump on all my sprained ankles, my knees, and ankles and all that stuff. So everyone's like, "What is this shit? It smells so bad." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry." But we do, everything that we do in the physical therapy world does come from the vet field as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
putting the
There's
horses
so
on the
much
power.
crossover.
Well, yeah, you can't stretch the horses really all the day long, so they put them on the vibration platforms after they get done running, right? So they
Mhm.
can get some of the muscles. Well, it's the same thing. That's where the vibrations came out for the humans. So I
Mhm.
love the whole full circle of it all. That's why I was interested in doing this podcast because it's like this is it. This is cool stuff. I love it for sure.
Yeah, well, make sure you mention this podcast to your farrier client. I
Oh
think.
yeah, no, definitely, yeah, no, definitely, yeah. And he's always doing different stuff, and he's like he's been all over, and he's does all the different horses, and he's like I guess he's the guy that comes in if they got really really bad problems, and
Mm,
he's supposed to be the badass guy out here. So
yeah.
yeah, I'll definitely mention. Matter of fact, I got a girl here right now. She's an equestrian, so I've got two equestrian jump riders that are in here, and they do stuff, and they got the broken ankles. They get stuck in the stirrups, right? Going over the gates and going over the jumps, they get stuck, so they got the broken ankles.
Oh,
But again, get back on there. If you fall off once, get back on it again. The old barn rules, right?
yeah.
Yeah. If you use it, put it back. If you open it, close it. The whole, yeah. If you ride it, feed it, right? If you ride
Yeah.
it, feed it. Give it water.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No,
Love
Absolutely.
it.
I think the metaphor of getting back on the horse, whether you're literally helping somebody get back on the horse or just helping people get back on the horse alive and
Yeah.
take their life back. I mean, I think that definitely goes a long way with the ranch community and how we approach things too is in helping people is we're helping them get back to whatever it is that you know and helping them come back from whatever knocked them down and
Yep.
rise up again and take their life back and
Mhm.
sometimes that looks like getting back on a real horse, and sometimes that looks like just getting back to what you were doing before everything went south. And so I just think that mindset over everything is true, no matter what you're doing.
It is. It is. And unfortunately, I didn't know it at a young age when my dad was teaching me that. This is the ranch life, son. I went to my grandfather's house. I was like, man, I'm bored. Here's the baling wire. Here's some pliers. There's thousands of feet of fence to go fix. Last time I said I was bored going to his house, I'm like, I'm done with that. But again, that's hard life. That is hard life. And so if you're going to succeed, the ranch in life is a tough, tough thing to do. It is tough to do. But at the end of the time, though, they create tough people, and that's what you got to be to survive in this world nowadays. You have to be tough.
Mhm.
You
Yeah. Soft times make soft people,
Yeah.
and tough times make tough people. Yeah.
Yep. And that was a whole analogy. I wish, I can't remember, but the hard times create soft men create good men, good men create bad times, and then bad times create tough men again. So, the whole cycle, it's like the fourth generation, I think, is what actually comes around that I try to talk about. But,
Mhm.
same thing with the horses, you think the next one's going to be the Kentucky Derby winner, maybe not. You know what I mean? Maybe not. By the way, I hit the superfecta this year in the Kentucky Derby. I'm only allowed to bet during the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. That's all my wife lets me. And I do it just because I like the horse racing and stuff like that. But this year I was lucky. I got the superfecta this year.
Ah,
Oh
cool.
Yeah,
boy.
yeah.
Very
Win.
good.
So
All right. Well,
good.
yeah, I think we probably ought to let everybody go. And Chad, we sure appreciate
No,
you
back to you,
being on.
Destry. No, I appreciate you guys having me for sure.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Chad, thank you so much for your positivity and fresh perspective. I mean, I think that no matter who you are or what you're doing, you definitely needed to hear that today. And so, again, thank you for all you do and all your help to people and just believing in yourself and helping others believe in them and their self as well. So, thank you all for listening and let your health be the pivot point to your success.